So here are your notes for section 1-5. And so here are our vocabulary words. And we're going to talk about complementary angles and supplementary angles first. And complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees, and supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. And keep in mind that they don't have to be next to each other. And you guys tend to get these mixed up. For some reason, I'm not really sure why. These should be a review for you. I'm sure you've heard those words before. Adjacent angles, they're angles that are right next to each other, though they do have to share a side. Linear pair, these are also angles that are right next to each other. They share a side and they add up to 180. Vertical angles are formed by by lines or segments that intersect each other, and these angles are equal to each other. And I will provide some examples of these in the next couple of slides. So pause this right now and write this down. So here's some examples. Tell whether these angles are adjacent to each other. And so in the first situation, we have angle BAC and CAD. Are these adjacent? Or EFG or HGF? Are these adjacent? Or are these adjacent? Or both? And here's the answer. These guys are, because they share the side AC. And these are not. It's kind of weird, but this side is not really shared by them. These guys are independent angles. And here, name a pair of complementary angles and a pair of supplementary angles. So if you take a look, we're looking here at complementary angles. We're looking for two angles that add up to be 90. And then we're looking for two angles that add up to be 180. And our complementary ones are UTV, 90, and then XYZ, 20 and 70. So that's going to be your 90. And then our supplementary ones are going to be VTW and XYZ. 110 and 70 are 180, and that's our supplementary. So finding measures of complements and supplements, if you see one is a complement of 2, that means that these guys are going to be adding up to 90. And if you know the measure of 2 is 57, well, if 2 is 57, and you got your little 90-degree mark there too, well, you know that this guy right here, if you add those together, they have to be 90. So you know that that one has to be 33. And by the way, they're using numbers here. This does not mean that this is 1 degree or 2 degrees or 3 degrees or 4 degrees. It's just another way to name an angle, which I actually like a little better than using letters. It's just a little more clean. Here they say that 3 is a supplement of 4, meaning that these guys add up to be 180. Also, these two would be considered to be a linear pair. They form this straight line right here. So 41 plus what is going to give you 180? In this case, it would be 139. So pause this, of course, and write this down. So we're going to find the measure of angle ABD and the measure of angle DBC. And here, again, you got to interpret your sketch. These are linear pairs. They're next to each other. You've got your straight line. So how would you set up the algebra? What would be an algebraic equation that you could do? So those two, if they're a linear pair, you know that they have to add up to 180. And make sure you answer the question. So do your algebra, get your x, and then plug it back in. And you're going to get that the measure of ABD is 54 and DBC is 126. And you can also double check. When you add those together, they're 180. And then here, this one is basically kind of the same, but there's two ways you could do this one. If this is 90, you know this part over here has to be 90. So you could actually set this up in two different ways. You could say that 2x plus 3x equals 90, or you could say 2x plus 3x plus 90 equals 180. You could do it either way. And then when you go ahead and you solve that and you get your x and you plug it back in, you're going to figure out ABD again and DBC. And notice that you can either double check it two ways. These two add up to 90, which they should, or 36 plus 54 plus 90 all add up to 180. And there's my little slide. That's my daughter and my dog, seeing if you guys actually watch this. So here we're identifying all of our linear pairs and our vertical angles. Just a little note here about vertical angles. Vertical angles are right across the street from each other. Like they're kind of like kitty corner. And 2 and 5 would be, that would be a pair of vertical angles. But I want to point out something so it can be a little tricky. 2 and 6 are not. So like 2 and 5 would have the exact same measure, but 2 and 6 would not. So take a look at this, copy it down, and name all of the vertical angles and name any linear pairs. And this is kind of a tricky question, and here's the answer. There actually are no linear pairs, okay? There are no two angles that are right next to each other that add up to 180. Like this whole angle plus 3 would be 180, but there's no two angles that add up to 180. And then here are the other, these are the vertical angles, 1 and 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. So if you take a look, 1 and 4, those guys are right across from each other, 3, 6, and then 2 and 5. So this one is a little tricky. They're asking for the values of x and y. So you got to be careful how you set this up. You might want to just right off the bat say like 4y equals 9x plus 5. But if you do that, you're going to have two variables. You're going to have 4y equals 9x plus 5, and there's no way really to solve that because you're going to have two variables, and you wouldn't have a way, unless you want to set up a system of equations, which would be a little more difficult. There's no way to solve that. So the better way to do this would be to say 16x plus 9x plus 5 equals 180. That's a much better way to solve that. And then once you get your x, you're going to plug it in right here, and then you could say, you know, you're going to get an x, get a number here, and then you can say 4y equals whatever number you get here. So it's going to look like this. You're going to say 16x plus 9x plus 5 equals 180. That's what you get from here because these guys are a linear pair. So that you get that your x is equal to 7. You put that in right here. So you're going to get 9 times 7 is 63. 63 plus 5 would be 68. So then you can say 4y equals 68. And then you can go ahead and you can get your y that way. Okay? Or you could have done it this way. You could have taken this 7 and put it in here. You could say 4y plus 16 times 7 equals 180. You could also get your y from that. So go ahead and try this same process, the same thought process, and do that with 26. Go ahead and try to figure out how you would set this up using your same thought from that and solve for your x and your y. And it's pretty much the same thing. You want to set it up using this linear pair here. Get your x is equal to 25 and plug it in here. And then set these two equal to each other. And that's how you can solve for your y. So now what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to flip over your paper, and I'd like for you to write a reflection on how the flipping the classroom is going for you so far. I'd like for you to think about, has anything changed for you? If you didn't like it, are you liking it a little bit better? Or if you've always liked it, what are some of the things that work for you? Or what are some of the things that don't work for you? I'd just like to get some of your thoughts on how it's going for you so far. Thank you.